Welcome, my soft-thinking listener. You've found yourself in the company of the Sleepy Sloth once again. A slow, scientifically minded fellow, who enjoys facts about objects, and things that are sometimes more myth than measurable matter. I must tell you something before we begin. Today, I consider myself a scientist in ancient symbols and storied relics. A scientist who is almost always correct, except for those few times when I am not. But even then, I prefer to drift gently onward, rather than fuss over it. Because what truly matters is the information itself. Before I start, please, let me know, what is the most boring thing you would secretly love hearing about? Let me know gently, in the comments. Now, let us begin today's episode on 5 objects from long ago, that lived partly in the world, and partly in the minds of those who believed in them. The Ankh of Life. From around 3000 BCE, a shape so simple, and yet, so enduring. Picture, if you will, a vertical loop resting gently above a straight crossbar, the whole form like a keyhole to eternity. In ancient Egypt, it appeared often in carved stone and painted walls, resting in the hands of deities, especially those with power over creation and the afterlife. The loop may have represented the sun rising over the horizon, or perhaps the union of male and female principles, or simply the idea of life itself. The Egyptians were fond of symbols that could mean more than one thing, as if each meaning could quietly rest inside the others. It was carried in temple processions, placed in tombs, and painted beside gods who extended it toward pharaohs, granting them the breath of life. No one truly knows if it was ever held as a physical object of ritual, or if it was mostly an emblem, drawn to suggest something greater. Some versions were carved from wood, others from stone or precious metals, their surfaces polished smooth, as if to invite a slow thumb to pass across them. And over millennia, it drifted outward, into other cultures, modern jewelry, and even fictional tales, though always keeping its soft loop and unwavering crossbar, like a whisper from the desert, reminding one of a promise to live beyond. Let us drift, ever so quietly, to the Benben Stone, dated to around 2500 BCE in tradition, though its origins belong to creation itself. In the story of Heliopolis, this was said to be the first mound to emerge from the primeval waters of chaos. Upon it, the sun god Ra, or in some versions, Atum, first stood, bringing light to the unformed world. The physical form, when represented, was often a smooth pyramidion, a small stone cap once placed atop obelisks or temple structures. Some scholars think it may have been meteorite iron, glistening in the sun, though others point to polished limestone or granite, materials beloved by Egyptian builders for their durability and shine. The name Benben itself may be connected to the verb veben, meaning to rise or to shine. It was not large by the standards of stone monuments, but its meaning was impossibly vast. In ritual, it may have served as a focus for sun worship, an anchor to the belief that the world began with a single point of stability rising from still waters. Today, none can say with certainty if the original Benben Stone still exists. Perhaps it was lost to time, or perhaps it rests quietly in a chamber, unseen. And yet, in every pyramidion that crowned an obelisk, a faint echo of its form can still be seen, each one a small reminder of that very first rising. The Shamash Tablet drifts into our thoughts like a slab of warm stone resting under the gentle weight of centuries, imagined around 2000 BCE. In the ancient Sumerian world, Shamash was the god of the sun and justice, often depicted with rays spreading from his shoulders, his light revealing truth and guiding fairness. The tablet linked to his name was said to carry not mere words, but divine instruction, laws as unbending as baked clay and as clear as daylight after mist. Historically, the concept calls to mind the Code of Hammurabi, whose diorite stele shows Shamash handing authority to the king, though the fabled Shamash Tablet exists more in the realm of mythic imagination. Its surface, if it ever lay before mortal eyes, might have been covered with cuneiform so dense it resembled rows of tiny reeds pressed into wet earth. The symbols could have described not only legal decrees but also principles for living, cosmic balance, and the proper way to weigh a dispute. The stone's imagined weight seems deliberate, as if the act of lifting it required not only strength of arm but purity of purpose. One can almost picture it resting in a temple niche, bathed in morning light, the carved sun disk above it catching the same rays as the god himself. The Sumerians saw justice not as a shifting notion, but as something set down, solid, enduring, immune to the erosion of opinion. And so, whether the Shamash Tablet was a physical object or a symbol passed through story, it remains a thought-shaped anchor to a time when law and light were one. The cup of Anu lingers in the mind like a vessel carved from the sky itself, tied in myth to around 1800 BCE. In Sumerian mythology, Anu was the supreme sky god, the quiet yet overarching authority in the pantheon, his domain stretching from horizon to horizon. The cup attributed to him was not merely a drinking vessel but a symbolic container of kingship, an emblem of divine approval to rule. Some accounts whisper that to drink from it was to drink legitimacy itself, a silent acknowledgement from the heavens that the bearer's reign was in harmony with cosmic order. In ancient Mesopotamian art, cups and libation vessels often appear in the hands of gods and kings, their shapes wide-mouthed and stable, designed to pour offerings or receive sacred liquids. The cup of Anu, though not archaeologically verified, would likely have been imagined in precious materials, gleaming gold, cool silver, or even lapis lazuli that mirrored the blue of the sky. Such a vessel might have been cradled during coronation rituals, its rim catching torchlight in a way that suggested sunrise over the plains. In this mythic context, a king who held the cup was not only ruler of a city but steward of divine will, tasked with keeping balance between the earthly and celestial. The symbolism was gentle yet absolute. Without the cup, one's authority was a claim; with it, that authority became an inheritance from the sky itself. And so, the cup of Anu remains an imagined artifact of power given in quiet ceremony, beneath the endless vault of heaven. The Syamantaka jewel gleams in story like a sunbeam trapped inside a stone, its legend settling around 1500 BCE in the oldest tellings. Rooted in Hindu mythology, it belonged to Surya, the sun god, radiant and steady, keeper of warmth and light. Legends tell that this gem shone with the brilliance of the midday sun, so much so that its presence alone was said to yield abundant harvests and unbroken prosperity to its possessor. But its gifts were double-edged; where it brought fortune, it also carried the potential for discord and misfortune, as if the brilliance of the sun could not help but cast shadows. In the Puranic tales, the jewel passed through many hands, including those of the noble Satyajit and the hero Krishna, its movements stirring disputes, suspicion, and unintended consequences. The gem's imagined appearance varies; some say it glowed red gold like molten metal, others that it was a deep, transparent amber, forever warm to the touch. In practical, symbolic terms, it embodied the concept that great wealth or divine favor is never without responsibility and risk. Its mythic association with Surya meant it was more than a treasure; it was a fragment of celestial order, a miniature sun that could bless fields or ignite quarrels, depending on the heart that held it. Even as a legend, it offers a slow lesson, that light and plenty, though gentle in themselves, can unsettle the balance if kept without humility. And so, the Syamantaka jewel rests in memory as a gem that shimmered not only with beauty, but with the weight of consequence. The Seal of Solomon, in its earliest proto-legend form, feels like a whisper from the edges of recorded history, half symbol, half tool, and entirely cloaked in story, traced by some to around 1400 BCE in distant echoes. In the broader ancient Near Eastern sphere, the idea of a ring granting dominion over spirits and animals was only beginning to take shape, a seed of a legend that would grow in later centuries. This early imagining was less about the ornate six-pointed star often shown in later traditions, and more about the concept of a signet or device imbued with divine sanction. A seal in the ancient world was both a literal stamp for marking ownership and a metaphysical signature of authority, its design pressed into clay as proof of command. In this proto-form, the Seal of Solomon, though not yet tied to the historical King Solomon, might have been envisioned as a finely worked metal band, set with a carved stone bearing symbols whose meaning was known only to priestly or royal circles. The ability to command animals in this context may have reflected the ordered harmony between a rightful ruler and the natural world, while spirits could have meant anything from protective household deities to the personifications of elements. Over time, the legend would shift, but in these earliest whispers, the seal was a quiet emblem, an object one did not flaunt, but simply wore, its power in the recognition it evoked. It was, in a sense, an early meditation on authority itself. Silent, enduring, and far more symbolic than sensational. The armor of Achilles takes shape in the mind like a sculpture hammered from sunlight and shadow, placed in the poetic age of the Trojan War, around 1200 BCE. In Greek mythology, this set of armor was forged by Hephaestus, the divine smith, at the request of the goddess Thetis for her son Achilles. The armor was more than protection, it was a work of art inscribed with images of the cosmos, of cities in peace and in war, of the earth's circle and the constellations above. In Homer's Iliad, the description of the shield alone is a slow, layered tapestry of human life and the natural world, a reminder that even in battle, the warrior carries the memory of all he fights to preserve. The metal, imagined as bronze with inlays of gold and silver, would have been impossibly bright in sunlight, almost too dazzling to look upon directly. This near invincibility it granted was not simply from strength of material, but from the divine craftsmanship, each plate, joint, and curve made without flaw. Yet even such armor could not undo fate, for Achilles, though shielded in metal touched by gods, still bore the single vulnerability of his mortal heel. The armor, after his death, became an object of dispute, as though it carried not only defensive power but the honor and legacy of its wearer. In the quiet telling, it stands as a reminder that even the most perfect craft cannot shield one entirely, but can shine all the same, like a poem made solid. Round the 12th century before the Common Era, tales in the Greek world spoke of a wondrous thing: the Golden Fleece. It was said to have once belonged to a magical ram, its wool gleaming like sunlight caught forever in gold. This ram, gifted with the power to fly, carried the children Phrixus and Helle away from danger, and upon reaching the distant land of Colchis, Phrixus sacrificed it to the gods. The fleece was hung in a sacred grove, guarded endlessly by a sleepless dragon whose coils rustled like dry reeds in the wind. The myths gave the fleece a meaning far greater than treasure. It became the shining emblem of kingship and divine right, something no mortal could simply take without the favor of higher powers. To claim it, as Jason and his Argonauts would centuries later in the telling, meant proving worthiness before gods and fate alike. Its glow in the stories was not just of gold, but of destiny, a constant reminder that authority in the ancient world was believed to be touched by something more than human will. From that same century, another myth drifted softly through the world's oldest cities, the story of the Palladium. In Troy, it was said a statue of Athena herself, carved in sacred times and brought by divine hands, stood in quiet watch. As long as it remained within the city's walls, the city could never fall. It was a talisman of protection, the stone embodiment of the goddess's promise. Some versions whispered it had fallen from the heavens. Others told of it being gifted to Dardanus by Zeus. In all accounts, its presence wove a thread of unshakable safety through Troy's fate, so that even in the shadow of war, its defenders believed the city's heart could not be touched. Only when it was stolen, by cunning and stealth, would the prophecy unravel, its silent blessing slipping away like a breath in the night. Around 1100 BCE, in the hills and valleys of ancient Israel, there is said to have existed a chest unlike any other, the Ark of the Covenant. This was no ordinary container, but a golden vessel, its surfaces overlaid with beaten gold, and its corners capped with cherubim, those angelic figures whose wings met in quiet, protective embrace above its lid, known as the mercy seat. Within it were kept the stone tablets, inscribed by the hand of God himself, carrying the 10 Commandments, the laws said to guide human behavior with unbending precision. To gaze upon the ark, or to approach it improperly, was thought dangerous, for it channeled divine presence in ways that mortals could scarcely endure. When the Israelites carried it into battle, it was not merely a symbol but an active participant, believed to cause rivers to part, walls to fall, and enemies to falter, though always in the rhythm of quiet obedience to divine will. Its journey through the desert, from Mount Sinai to the plains of Canaan, was marked by ritual, prayer, and the slow, deliberate lifting and placement by Levites trained for this sacred task. The ark's very construction, acacia wood, gold plating, precise measurements given down from God, invites the imagination to linger on each detail, on each smooth, glimmering surface that reflected torchlight as if remembering sunlight from a distant morning. And so, in the myth and scripture, the ark remains a vessel of presence, law, and mystery, quietly asserting that some objects carry the weight of the sacred, not through force, but through enduring, watchful attention. Moving on to the millennium mark, approximately 1000 BCE, in the layering of Indian legend, whispers tell of a diamond unlike any other, the Koh-i-Noor, whose name means mountain of light. Though its physical history becomes traceable many centuries later, its earliest myths speak of it as a gem of immense, almost unearthly power, touched by divinity and burdened with the weight of destiny. It was said to shine with the brilliance of the sun, so that light itself seemed captured within its facets, a miniature sun held in stone. The legends tell of kings and rulers who possessed it, each one marked by both fortune and misfortune, as if the diamond carried a consciousness of judgment, quietly bestowing favor or subtle warning in equal measure. Some stories suggest it was brought down from the heavens, or found within the depths of sacred mountains, while others imagine it as a fragment of a larger celestial order, intended to remind humans that power comes always with responsibility. The gem's imagined color ranges in the earliest tales from a pure, almost translucent white to a glow tinged with the warmth of golden sunlight, and it is said to warm slightly to the touch, as if breathing with life of its own. Its mythic narrative intertwines with the fates of kings, dynasties, and empires, suggesting that authority is never granted lightly, and that even the smallest object can hold echoes of cosmic scale. In quiet meditation on these stories, the Koh-i-Noor rests as both a treasure and a caution, a slow reminder that brilliance, like time itself, is rarely without shadow. Around 900 BCE, in the rolling, mist-covered hills of Ireland, there is told the tale of the Stone of Fall, or Lia Foyle, a stone unlike any other, steeped in the quiet authority of kingship. It rested upon the hill of Tara, which itself was a gathering place of power, law, and ceremony. The stone, some say, had been brought from the ancient lands of the gods, carrying with it a deep, resonant voice that only spoke under certain circumstances. When the rightful king of Ireland stepped upon its surface during coronation rites, it is said to roar, a low and steady sound that echoed across the plains, affirming divine sanction of rule. To those who approached the stone unworthy, it remained silent, a patient guardian of order, as if it could discern the threads of fate in a person's very bearing. Over centuries, the tales grew, telling of kings tested by it, of its enduring presence amidst wars, shifting territories, and the slow march of generations. Some scholars suggest the roar may symbolize an ancient ritual involving speech, chant, or drum, preserved in the mist of imagination and memory. The stone itself, imagined as rough yet warm beneath the foot, serves not only as a marker of human authority but as a conduit between the earthly and the sacred, a tangible whisper from a landscape where myth and history entwine. Even in silence, it remains a monument to continuity, waiting quietly for the rightful presence to awaken its voice. In the frost-laden myths of northern Europe, around 800 BCE, there is the tale of Brisingamen, a necklace belonging to Freya, the goddess whose domain included both beauty and fertility, though in the oldest sagas it also spoke of cosmic order. Crafted by dwarves, whose hands worked with patience rivaling the growth of stone and metal alike, the necklace was said to glow with a warm light, soft yet persistent, like dawn spilling across a frozen fjord. Its gems, imagined as polished amber or gold, reflected the goddess's favor, attracting admiration and awe, but never demanding it. To wear Brisingamen was to be touched by divinity, a slow blessing that enhanced fertility, wealth, and even the quiet magnetism of personal presence, though always tempered by respect and ritual. Some stories whisper of thieves or gods attempting to seize it, each tale emphasizing the careful balance between desire and restraint, the reminder that even divine beauty must be honored with patience. Its journey, whether hung upon Freya's neck or briefly held by mortals, reminds listeners that power and allure are not abrupt forces but subtle, enduring, and deliberate, gliding through time like soft light over still water. In the hushed telling, the necklace is less an ornament than a meditation on the delicate weave of favor, charm, and cosmic harmony, shining softly in the memory of those who hear its legend. Around 800 BC, within the rolling, dew-slicked hills and misty valleys of ancient Ireland, there existed in story a vessel of quiet, unending provision, the cauldron of Dagda. The god Dagda, known for his immense wisdom and measured power, possessed this magical cauldron, said to hold an inexhaustible supply of food. When placed upon the ground, the cauldron could feed countless warriors or travelers, never emptying, and never spilling more than was needed, as though it understood moderation in its own gentle way. Some versions of the tale suggest the cauldron was broad and low, wrought from bronze, its surface etched with symbols perhaps marking the cycles of harvest, of moonlight, or of seasons flowing into each other with soft inevitability. Others imagine it brimming with steaming stews, grains, and meats, its vapors curling upward like lazy spirals into the sky, scenting the air with warmth and comfort. The cauldron was not merely sustenance, it was a symbol, quiet and patient, of abundance that did not shout or demand recognition, a reminder that divine power could manifest in gentle, persistent generosity. In gatherings of the Tuatha De Danann, the cauldron was said to be central, a focus of ceremony, ensuring harmony and care for all who came near. Even as centuries passed and the mist drifted like clouds over the land, the idea of a vessel that never emptied remained. A meditation on sufficiency, continuity, and the quiet assurance that, at times, need can be met without effort or strife. Around 750 BC, somewhere in the Celtic lands of rolling hills and fog-laden forests, an early tale began to emerge of a sort of sovereignty, proto-legendary yet resonant through centuries, the ancestor of the later Excalibur, sometimes called Caladbolg in older tales. This sword was no mere tool of war, it was a sign, a token that authority and rulership were recognized not by force alone but by lineage, virtue, and cosmic favor. The blade itself, imagined in the oldest accounts, was curved slightly, reflecting sunlight in slow, shifting glimmers, its edge keen yet tempered by a mysterious, almost sacred quality. To hold it was to hold the right to govern, the responsibility of protection, and the subtle burden of judgment. In early Celtic ritual, such weapons may have been presented during ceremonies at hilltops, or marked by offerings to the gods, a quiet act of acknowledgement that leadership was sanctioned from beyond the human world. Over time, this story would intertwine with the more familiar Arthurian legends, but in its earliest whisper, it existed as a meditative emblem of authority, an object that signified both power and restraint. The sword's presence in myth invites reflection on the slow, deliberate unfolding of law, order, and legitimacy, reminding listeners that to rule rightly is to accept weight without haste, and to be recognized by virtue rather than by mere desire. In the golden hours of Greek myth around 700 BC, there are tales of the apples of the Hesperides, fruit so rare and luminous that they seem to capture sunlight itself within their skins. These apples were kept in a garden at the western edge of the world, tended by nymphs and guarded by a dragon named Ladon, whose 100 heads, or in some versions, a single vigilant coil, watched silently, ensuring that the fruits of immortality were not plucked carelessly. The apples were said to confer long life or even immortality to those who consumed them, though they were never given lightly, and the guardianship reflected a careful balance of desire and restraint. Some versions suggest the apples were golden, shining faintly like soft stars against dark leaves, each one heavy with the weight of divine blessing and slow, inevitable consequence. Heroes of old, including Heracles and his labors, were tasked with retrieving them, a journey requiring patience, cunning, and endurance, more than brute force, as the garden itself was a place apart from ordinary time, where light, shadow, and space moved with measured, almost imperceptible rhythm. The apples remind us, softly and insistently, that immortality is not a gift to be seized in haste, but a concept to ponder, a meditation on the gentle stretching of life, the care required in tending both fruit and spirit, and the quiet acknowledgement that some treasures are preserved simply because of the vigilance that surrounds them. In the same era, approximately 700 BCE, Greek myth whispers of the helmet of Hades, a cap of invisibility, subtle and unassuming yet imbued with extraordinary utility. This helmet, wrought in the hands of gods and legendary smiths, allowed its wearer to vanish from sight, moving silently across battlefields or through perilous landscapes without recognition. Heroes such as Perseus employed it in quiet, deliberate ways, as did gods in their interventions, each act measured, patient, and carefully considered. The helmet was imagined as a simple, metallic cap, perhaps of bronze or iron, polished to a dim gleam that caught moonlight rather than sunlight, its surface unadorned but potent with enchantment. In tales, it conferred neither strength nor protection from injury, but the subtle advantage of invisibility, a reminder that power often lies not in force but in discretion, timing, and the careful use of knowledge. Scholars suggest that the idea may reflect older traditions of ceremonial disguise, or the notion that authority and influence sometimes operate unseen, silently guiding events without announcement. In contemplating this helmet, one is invited to imagine the slow, measured movement of a figure passing unseen through forests, hills, or city streets, the world moving quietly around them, and the profound, almost imperceptible power that comes not from confrontation, but from subtle presence and the gentle art of invisibility. Around 650 BCE, in the mist-wrapped hills and dense, quiet forests of ancient Wales, stories tell of the harp of Tertu, an instrument unlike any other, imbued with magic so subtle that it seemed to play itself. It is said that when the harp's strings vibrated, they did so without human touch, producing a melody soft and deliberate, notes curling through the air like smoke from a slowly smoldering hearth. The music could calm even the most restless of warriors, their hearts slowing in gentle rhythm with each drawn tone, and it could tame wild beasts, causing them to lie quietly, ears twitching, as if listening to the secrets of the hills themselves. Some versions of the tale describe the harp as carved from yew or ash, was thought to carry the memory of centuries, with strings perhaps of horsehair or fine metal, each tensioned perfectly to capture the faintest whisper of wind or shadow. The harp was not merely an instrument, but a conduit for the harmonious pulse of the world, reminding listeners that even in conflict or chaos, there exist forces of soft order and rhythm. In some retellings, warriors and druids alike would sit beside it, allowing the music to wash over them, while the landscape itself seemed to respond, trees swaying as if nodding to the melody, rivers reflecting its gentle cadence. The harp of Tertu remains in memory not as a tool of power in the usual sense, but as an emblem of subtle influence, where sound itself becomes a balm, and the quiet persistence of harmony shapes the living world as surely as any sword or shield. Around 600 BCE, somewhere along the sunlit shores and stormy depths of the ancient Greek world, there exists the myth of Poseidon's trident, a three-pronged scepter said to command oceans, storms, and even the tremors of the earth. The trident, wrought by divine hands, was imagined as long and gleaming, perhaps of bronze or tempered celestial metal, catching sunlight like liquid reflection as it passed above waves. Its presence was not just an assertion of force, but an emblem of cosmic balance, the slow articulation of power over the shifting, unpredictable rhythms of water. Sailors and storytellers alike whispered of how Poseidon might strike the sea with a downward sweep, generating waves that rolled like hills across the horizon, or lift his trident in quiet warning, and the wind would follow in obedient gusts. Some myths suggest the trident could summon earthquakes, not with frenzy, but with measured, deliberate subtlety, reminding mortals that the foundation beneath their feet was never entirely theirs to command. In art and literature, the trident is depicted leaning against rocks, or held aloft in stately repose, a marker of authority, patience, and the rhythmic pulse of the deep. It is an instrument of order, control, and natural law, though one tempered with the slow, inevitable temperament of the god who wields it, whose moods echo in tides, storms, and the soft, inexorable turning of the earth itself. By approximately 550 BCE, the Seal of Solomon reaches a fully realized form in Jewish and later Islamic tradition, known as a ring granting the king dominion over jinn, animals, and even the wind itself. The ring, imagined as a simple band yet carved with complex geometric patterns, often hexagrams or interlocking shapes, served not merely as ornament but as a sign of divine sanction, a tangible marker of wisdom and authority. Stories tell that King Solomon, endowed with insight and judgment, could summon spirits, compel obedience from creatures of land, air, and hidden realms, and influence the very movement of unseen currents of air. In legends, the ring was worn close to the skin, as if keeping the connection between human intention and cosmic force intimate and deliberate. Some accounts describe it as inlaid with precious stones, others as unadorned but glowing faintly with the aura of the sacred. Its power manifests less in spectacle than in the quiet, measured accomplishment of command. The stories emphasize careful use, each act of influence required judgment, patience, and an understanding of the natural and supernatural laws. In reflection, the fully developed Seal of Solomon is not a weapon in haste, but an emblem of measured authority, a reminder that power, even when absolute, is most effective when applied with thought, reverence, and the soft discipline of self-restraint, echoing through myth as a gentle guide rather than a storm. In the quiet hills of Wales, around 500 BC, there exists the tale of the Cauldron of Rebirth, also known as Peridotony, a vessel of uncanny, slow-working magic. Legends speak of it as a large, bronze cauldron, its rim worn smooth with countless hands and ages, capable of restoring the dead to life. Yet, those who emerged from it returned without speech, their voices swallowed by the mystery of the cauldron's enchantment. It was not considered a source of frivolous resurrection, but a tool for reflection on the nature of life, death, and the fragile boundary between them. Druids and warriors alike would gather near it in story, observing the careful, deliberate application of its power, seeing in its workings a meditation on continuity and limitation, on the gentle persistence of cycles that humans might neither fully command nor entirely comprehend. Some accounts suggest that the cauldron could also heal or nourish, offering sustenance to the living in the same way it restored the dead, and that it existed as a central symbol of the Tuatha Danan's mastery over subtle, life-altering forces. The vessel's imagined surface glimmered faintly under torchlight, each ripple in its bronze walls echoing the slow, steady rhythm of existence itself. In thinking of Peridotony, one is invited to ponder the patience of nature, the quiet inevitability of return and renewal, and the soft, sometimes imperfect gift of revival, a reminder that even in magic, restraint and subtlety govern the deepest of transformations. Around 400 BC, in the whispering valleys of India and the high, cloud-wrapped plateaus of Tibet, there is spoken of a jewel of extraordinary legend, the Chintamani stone, sometimes likened to the Philosopher's stone of Western lore. This gem was said to grant wishes, not merely through sudden flashes of light or loud proclamation, but with quiet, measured patience, as if the stone itself understood the slow unfolding of desire and the careful timing required for fulfillment. Imagined in myths as glowing softly, sometimes clear as polished crystal, other times deep and opaque like molten amber, the Chintamani was thought to respond to intent, to reflect the inner virtue or folly of those who sought its aid. Monks, sages, and wandering kings were said to seek it, often in remote mountains or hidden sanctuaries, guided by meditative insight rather than maps or instruments. Some versions of the tale suggest the stone was accompanied by guardians or spiritual forces, ensuring that its power was neither abused nor wasted, that each wish arose from reflection rather than impulsive longing. The jewel also carried associations with the broader cosmos. As it fulfilled desires, it maintained balance, harmonizing the seeker's needs with the greater rhythm of existence. Its presence, real or imagined, invites a slow, contemplative awareness of cause and effect, of subtle influence in the patient cultivation of worthiness. In thinking of the Chintamani stone, one is reminded that even objects of immense power may act quietly, gently guiding events without abruptness, teaching that fulfillment is most serene when earned with care, and that the slow, deliberate act of seeking is itself a part of the wish's soft unfolding. Around 300 BCE, along the misty islands and volcanic ridges of early Japan, there is whispered the story of the sword Kusanagi no Tsurugi, one of the three sacred treasures, a blade of valor and quiet authority. The sword's origins in myth place it within the grasp of the storm god Susanoo, who discovered it within the tail of the great serpent Yamata no Orochi, a feat requiring patience, cleverness, and calm deliberation. The blade itself is imagined as slightly curved, with a subtle glint of polished metal that catches the early morning sun in muted glimmers, rather than glaring brilliance. Kusanagi symbolizes courage tempered with wisdom, a token of rightful rule and measured action rather than mere martial might. In early ceremonial practice, or in stories preserved orally for generations, the sword is not wielded recklessly. It is a reminder of restraint, the slow cultivation of authority, and the importance of discernment in judgment. Its very presence, along with its sister treasures, conveys legitimacy, connecting the human holder to divine lineage in ways subtle and reverent. Artists and storytellers describe it with delicate attention, the balance of its hilt, the smooth tension of its blade, the almost imperceptible resonance when struck against air or metal. Kusanagi no Tsurugi, in legend, teaches that valor is measured not by speed or volume, but by the patient and thoughtful alignment of skill, duty, and cosmic favor, a lesson softly echoed through centuries of mythic memory, and quietly reflected in the slow, deliberate gaze of the attentive observer. In the coastal plains and temple-covered mountains of Japan, around 200 BCE, there exists the mythic mirror Yata no Kagami, a sacred object said to embody wisdom. This mirror, polished to reflect not merely faces but the subtle truth of intention, is one of the three sacred treasures of Japan, part of the regalia that binds the authority of rulers to the calm weight of insight. It is imagined as perfectly smooth, held in gentle ceremonies, its surface catching light like water pooled in a stone basin, neither revealing too much at once nor obscuring essential clarity. Myths tell that the mirror guided emperors and leaders in judgment, its reflection reminding them of justice, prudence, and the importance of seeing beyond immediate appearances. Some legends suggest that its creation involved divine smithing or celestial intervention, connecting the mortal realm to the slow, patient unfolding of cosmic order. The mirror does not shout, it does not command, it merely shows, ever so quietly, the harmony or imbalance present within a moment or person. In the meditative imagination of those who considered it, the Yata no Kagami stands as a tool of reflection, a gentle teacher that emphasizes observation, patience, and measured discernment. Its presence in myth and ritual whispers a soft message, that true wisdom is earned in calm attention, and that clarity, like water or sunlight, comes to those who wait and observe with quiet devotion, noticing each small detail and subtle nuance in the unfolding of events. Also around 200 BCE, in the same tradition of imperial regalia, there is the jewel Yasakani no Magadama, a curved stone symbolizing benevolence, its surface smooth and warm to the imagined touch. The Magadama, often fashioned from jade, agate, or other polished stone, is not merely ornamental, it represents the patient cultivation of virtue, the slow shaping of character and care, qualities necessary for rulers to govern gently and effectively. Its crescent shape evokes the bending moon, a natural rhythm of subtle illumination, soft and persistent, reminding its holder of cycles, balance, and the quiet unfolding of responsibility. Passed carefully through generations and incorporated into ceremony, the jewel is not wielded as a weapon but presented as a token of trust, a meditation on the alignment of human action with moral and cosmic order. Legends note that it is part of the three sacred treasures alongside sword and mirror, each complementing the other, balancing valor, wisdom, and benevolence, suggesting that true authority is composed of measured qualities, each cultivated slowly and deliberately. Its deep green or translucent surface catches light like calm water, inviting contemplation rather than immediate judgment. The Yasukani no Magatama teaches, softly, that power is meaningful only when guided by kindness, reflection, and steady attention, a jewel whose very shape embodies the gentle curve of responsibility, the quiet passage of time, and the enduring presence of virtue in the world. Around 100 BCE, in the sun-baked courts and shadowed palaces of ancient Persia, there is spoken of the goblet of truth, a vessel said to reveal falsehood as gently as dawn illuminates a quiet landscape. The cup was imagined as simple in form, perhaps gold or silver, its surface polished smooth so that reflections might whisper rather than shout. Legends suggest that when a person spoke into it, the liquid inside would shimmer or change, an almost imperceptible signal to indicate honesty or deception, a slow, deliberate manifestation of divine justice. Kings and nobles were said to consult it, not in hurried judgment, but in measured consideration, as if allowing the cup's quiet observation to guide their discernment. Some versions hint at the cup being filled with wine or water, though the particular choice mattered less than the symbolic function. The goblet served as a mirror of conscience, a calm reminder that truth, like light on water, bends and reflects in gentle, subtle ways. Its presence encouraged reflection, patience, and careful speech, creating a ritual of quiet accountability in the shadowed halls of power. Imagined in use, courtiers might lean close, hushed, observing the faint undulations of liquid, the tiny glints of reflected torchlight, and through this slow attentiveness, the goblet of truth enforced honesty without clamor, a soft, enduring symbol of moral gravity that did not need to shout to be felt. By 1 CE, amidst the reverent hush of early Christian storytelling, there emerges the legend of the Spear of Destiny, or Holy Lance, said to have pierced the side of Christ during the crucifixion. The object is described as simple, a long shaft tipped with iron, yet imbued with power that ripples quietly through history, whispered to grant victory to its holder. In many traditions, the spear was not merely a weapon but a token of divine favor, a tangible link between mortal and sacred will, carrying authority that was subtle yet absolute. Chronicles and later legends suggest it passed through emperors, knights, and monarchs, each experiencing the quiet gravity of its presence rather than any noisy or immediate change. Some imagined its metal as cold and weighty, its tip glinting faintly, carrying a resonance that demanded careful attention, patience, and reflection. The Spear of Destiny thus serves as both a historical artifact in imagination and a symbol, a reminder that power and influence may be slow-moving, their effects subtle and pervasive, like water carving stone over centuries. Its role is less in dramatic display than in the quiet, enduring assertion of divine right and the soft unfolding of fate that respects neither haste nor force, yet persists across generations in whispered reverence. Around 100 CE, within the diverse folktales of Europe, there exists the story of the 7-league boots, footwear that granted its wearer the ability to stride great distances in a single step, covering leagues that ordinary travelers could only dream of. These boots, imagined often of supple leather with fine stitching and sometimes metallic embellishment, were not merely objects of speed, but instruments of deliberate movement, extending the reach of a person with careful, considered intent. In stories, they carried protagonists across forests, mountains, and rivers, each stride measured and silent, allowing observation of the land and people traversed in a manner that encouraged reflection and patience despite the apparent swiftness. The magic is imagined not as chaotic haste but as a gentle stretching of the natural rhythm of motion, blending human agency with subtle, extraordinary aid. Tales note that the boots required skill and awareness, to step without falling, to travel without losing one's bearing, to respect the slow accumulation of experience even while leaping distances. Through this lens, the 7-league boots become more than mere speed. They are a meditation on the quiet amplification of effort, the expansion of perspective, and the soft, careful consideration of the journey itself, reminding one that even the most extraordinary tools are most meaningful when used with calm thought and attentiveness, like the measured turning of gears in a well-oiled clock, endlessly patient and precise. By 200 CE, in Islamic legend, the Table of Solomon appears as a remarkable artifact, a banquet table imbued with divine blessing, said to provide sustenance for all who came to it. This table is imagined as long and unadorned yet perfectly proportioned, its surface reflecting the soft glow of lamp or candle, a quiet focus of abundance rather than ostentation. Myths suggest that anyone who approached with humility and need could partake of its provisions, each dish appearing thoughtfully, deliberately, enough to feed without waste. The table embodies the slow, enduring generosity of wisdom, patience, and divine provision, reminding observers that nourishment, whether of body or spirit, is most meaningful when shared thoughtfully and without hurry. Some versions hint at subtle inscriptions along its edges, symbols conveying the ethical imperatives of justice, fairness, and moderation, quietly reinforcing the moral structure underlying the miraculous sustenance. One can imagine the soft clinking of utensils, the gentle rustle of robes as supplicants approached, and the still, steady presence of the table itself, unhurried and enduring, a meditation on the slow, patient rhythm of provision and care. In reflecting upon the Table of Solomon, one is reminded that abundance, when offered with deliberation, becomes not mere consumption, but a gentle, sustaining presence, quietly shaping community, thought, and the rhythms of daily life, leaving a lasting imprint not through haste or drama, but through the soft, careful unfolding of generosity itself. Around 300 CE, in the rolling hills and quiet rivers of ancient China, there is whispered the tale of the sword of Gujian, a weapon both historical and mythic, whose steel seems to have captured the patient passage of time itself. This sword, attributed to the king Gujian of Yue, is famed for its extraordinary preservation. When excavated from tombs centuries later, its blade remained sharp, untarnished, and resistant to corrosion, as though the metal itself had absorbed the calm stillness of the earth. Legend suggests that the sword carried more than mere martial power. It embodied the virtue, patience, and perseverance of its owner, a slow, deliberate reflection of kingly character crystallized in cold, shining steel. Its hilt, imagined as elegantly simple yet perfectly balanced, invites the eye to linger on subtle inlays and decorations that speak quietly of craftsmanship without hurry. Some stories describe the sword gleaming faintly even in dim light, a soft reminder of presence and authority, not through dramatic flash but through patient endurance. In imagining the act of drawing it from its sheath, one can almost hear the soft whisper of metal against metal, a slow, reassuring signal that the tool of governance and defense is ready, yet requires understanding, care, and measured application. The sword of Gujian teaches, softly, that strength endures not through abrupt force, but through quiet resilience, careful crafting, and the unhurried passage of time, its legend preserved as both a historical curiosity and a meditation on the subtle alignment of human skill and natural patience. By 400 CE, in the vivid oral tradition of Ireland, there exists the red branch shield, an object of martial symbolism associated with the warriors of Ulster. This shield, described as glowing like the soft sun at dawn, was said to instill fear in opponents not through clamor or flash, but through a steady, confident brilliance that marked the strength and courage of its bearer. Crafted from imagined layers of wood, bronze, and leather, its curvature and surface would have been designed to both protect and project authority, reflecting light in ways that made the warrior appear larger, more deliberate, and inexorably present in the field of battle. Some tales hint that the shield's radiance was almost magical, a slow and subtle aura rather than sudden illumination, encouraging steadiness in allies and hesitation in foes. The red branch shield, in contemplation, is more than a defensive tool, it is a symbol of disciplined power, patience, and the quiet assertion of leadership. Warriors who bore it would have been mindful not only of offense and defense, but of the impression created by calm confidence, the reflection of sun upon its surface echoing the slow rhythm of heartbeat and breath. Even in retelling, the shield's effect is gentle and pervasive, like a sunbeam passing through mist, reminding one that presence and influence often operate quietly, steadily, and with enduring subtlety, rather than through sudden display or brash motion. Around 500 CE, within the intertwining worlds of early Christian and Arthurian legend, the Holy Grail appears as a cup of extraordinary mythic weight. Said to have been present at the Last Supper, and to have collected the blood of Christ during the crucifixion, the Grail embodies divine grace, spiritual sustenance, and, in some tales, the promise of eternal life. It is imagined as simple, a vessel of modest form yet radiant with quiet light, neither ostentatious nor demanding, but commanding attention through its very presence. Pilgrims, knights, and seekers are depicted approaching it with slow reverence, guided not by haste but by careful contemplation, the Grail's miraculous properties revealing themselves only to those patient and pure of heart. Some legends suggest its surface shimmers like liquid light, capturing faint glimmers of surrounding candles or sunbeams, yet always gently, without abrupt glare. The Holy Grail, in these tales, serves not only as a source of nourishment or miraculous effect, but as a meditation on the slow, persistent pursuit of virtue, patience, and moral alignment. One can imagine the soft echo of footsteps in a quiet chapel or forest clearing, the rustle of robes and whispered prayers, and the Grail remaining serene, unmoved, offering its quiet blessings in measured, deliberate proportion. Its story endures as a reflection on the value of observation, persistence, and humility, a symbol of spiritual attainment that unfolds slowly, like a careful breath, through the patient experience of seekers over centuries. By 600 CE, in the Frankish courts and stories surrounding Charlemagne, there is recounted the sword Joyeuse, a weapon of gentle brilliance and enduring legend. It is said to change color in the presence of battle, shifting subtly in hue and glint, as if reflecting not only light but the calm observation and moral clarity of its wielder. Crafted from fine steel and ornamented with subtle inscriptions and inlays, the sword's hilt and blade were imagined with such care that every line and curve spoke of deliberate, patient artistry rather than hasty embellishment. Charlemagne's Joyeuse was not only a tool of warfare but a symbol of sovereignty, authority, and the measured exercise of power. Legends recount that when raised in ceremony or defense, it shone softly, illuminating the scene in steady, gentle reflection rather than abrupt flash, conveying strength, legitimacy, and calm vigilance. The sword's presence reminded knights and observers alike that leadership and courage are cultivated through careful attention, reflection, and adherence to principle. In stories, the blade whispers of human endeavor harmonized with divine favor, teaching that heroism and authority need not be loud or hurried, but are most enduring when expressed with patience, precision, and subtlety. The Joyeuse becomes, therefore, both a practical instrument of defense and an allegory of slow, considered virtue, its legend lingering across centuries, like the measured turning of a wheel, inexorably steady and quietly radiant. Around 700 CE, in the frost-kissed realms of early Norse mythology, there is the story of Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, a tool both feared and revered, described as capable of leveling mountains and yet always returning to the hand of its godly wielder. The hammer, imagined in myth as small enough to be grasped firmly yet impossibly heavy to any mortal, carried not only destructive force but a quiet rhythm of certainty. One lifts it, it strikes, and it returns, an unhurried cycle of action and consequence. Its head, often depicted as square or slightly curved, might have been etched with runes, symbols of protection and the binding of order to chaos, though the stories do not insist on precise form, preferring instead the enduring idea of reliability and cosmic authority. In contemplation, one can picture Thor standing in a fjord or atop a ridge, muscles relaxed yet ready, the hammer moving in smooth arcs, leaving the earth reshaped in its slow, deliberate wake. Even when hurled against giants or storms, the weapon's return is inevitable, a meditation on cause and effect, patience, and the inevitability of certain forces. The legend emphasizes more than power, it whispers of stewardship, the careful exercise of might, and the steady presence of guardianship, a reminder that even immense strength may act with quiet precision, like wind shaping stone over centuries, invisible yet unceasing. Mjolnir thus exists not only as a symbol of Norse courage and protection but also as a soft, persistent echo of enduring natural law, folded gently into the mythic imagination of 8th century storytellers. By 800 CE, in the poetic epics of France, the horn of Roland emerges as a sonorous emblem of alert and loyalty, the elephant horn whose note could travel for miles across the misty plains and hills. The horn, imagined as carved from elephant ivory and polished until smooth, produced a sound both commanding and measured, a slow ripple of signal that could summon allies, warn of danger, or mark a heroic deed. Legends suggest that Roland, bearer of the horn, needed great lung capacity and patience to sound it fully, and that its resonance carried both authority and responsibility. Unlike abrupt or chaotic calls, the horn's effect was quiet yet pervasive, reaching ears with deliberation and clarity, echoing across forests and valleys as a gentle insistence of duty. Some accounts imagine the elephant decorated with simple incisions or ceremonial motifs, reminders that the instrument is both practical and symbolic. In thinking of the horn's use, one might hear it softly vibrating the air, moving like a slow current through the landscape, prompting organized action and reflection rather than immediate chaos. The horn of Roland becomes, in this slow telling, a meditation on communication, patience, and the persistent reach of human intention when harmonized with craft and attention. Its legend endures as a measured signal of valor and steadfastness, a reminder that even sound may move gently, yet profoundly, across time and space. Around 900 CE, the Norse legend recounts Andvarinnat, a gold ring imbued with both wealth and misfortune, its tale lingering in the imagination like the subtle glint of sunlight on still water. The ring, fabled to belong first to the dwarf Andvari, was taken and cursed in vengeance, a quiet reminder that material gain may carry hidden consequences, slow to manifest yet inexorable. Its design is imagined as simple, a polished band of gold, small enough to fit a finger yet resonant with narrative weight, its lustrous surface catching light in ways that hint at both promise and peril. Possessors of Andvarinnat in myth, kings, heroes, and mortals, experienced subtle disruptions, fortunes appearing, only to be shadowed by loss or calamity, teaching a slow lesson in caution and the double nature of desire. In reflecting on the ring, one can imagine it resting quietly on a table or finger, unassuming yet heavy with invisible consequence, much like the steady pull of tides unseen beneath a placid lake. Stories emphasize that its curse is patient, not immediate, its effect is cumulative, a meditation on responsibility, greed, and the hidden cost of treasures acquired without mindfulness. Andvarinnat thus exists as both jewel and moral instrument, a gentle echo through Norse imagination, reminding one that even objects of beauty carry weight beyond their surface, and that careful consideration tempers both desire and action over long, unhurried spans of time. By approximately 950 CE, in the legends surrounding the city of Seville, there is the Cross of Nath, a miraculous relic credited with protection against harm and calamity. The cross, imagined as modest yet radiant, might have been wrought from silver or bronze, its form simple yet deliberate, a quiet emblem of divine guardianship resting within a cathedral or chapel. Stories suggest that its presence alone sufficed to shield the city from disaster, offering reassurance not through dramatic display but through slow, persistent, and almost imperceptible influence, like a shadow stretching across a sunlit wall. Some accounts hint at inscriptions or engravings, subtle markers of faith and devotion, quietly reinforcing the protective power attributed to the object. Pilgrims and citizens alike may have approached it with soft reverence, the air around it filled with gentle footfalls and murmured prayers, a rhythm of care and reflection rather than sudden awe. The legend emphasizes that the Cross of Nath functions in time, its protective influence measured, deliberate, and enduring. Imagining its effect is to feel a steady calm, a soft assurance that vigilance need not be constant or loud to be effective. Its story endures as a meditation on enduring faith, quiet moral presence, and the subtle, careful exercise of protection, reminding one that even a single, small object may cast a long, steady shadow of security across the lives of those who honor it, weaving reassurance through generations without haste or fanfare. Around 1000 CE, within the quiet imagination of Jewish legend, there exists the shamir, sometimes described as a worm, sometimes as a magical stone, with the remarkable ability to cut the hardest rock without tools, heat, or force, used in the construction of Solomon's temple. The shamir's attributes, though subtle and almost intangible, are described with a meticulous attention to its function. It moves slowly, deliberately, cutting through stone as if the rock itself welcomes its passage, leaving no scars of labor, no dust of laborious chiseling, only a smooth and perfect incision. Some texts suggest it was small enough to hold easily yet impossibly potent, a paradox that invites reflection on patience and precision, the quiet authority of nature or divine favor manifest in an unassuming form. Imagining the shamir in operation, one can picture the serene hallways of a nascent temple, stone blocks aligning perfectly under its gentle guidance, workers and priests observing in reverent silence, sensing that something extraordinary is occurring without noise or flourish. The legend teaches the subtle lesson that immense outcomes may arise from the slow and steady application of carefully guided forces, that efficiency need not be violent, and that divine wisdom often works through imperceptible, almost meditative methods. The shamir, though largely mythic, lingers in thought as a quiet testament to patient precision and the soft, enduring shaping of great human endeavors by forces unseen, slow, and deliberate, quietly inspiring awe without spectacle. By 1100 CE, in the lands of Mesoamerica, there are whispered accounts of the crystal skulls, artifacts carved from quartz and often human-shaped, alleged to carry visions, mystical powers, and subtle channels to spiritual knowledge. Each skull, imagined as perfectly smooth and cool to the touch, reflects light slowly and unevenly, like the dappled sun through leaves in a forest clearing, inviting the eye to wander over its curves and contours without haste. Some are said to hold the accumulated wisdom of ages, providing insight only to those patient enough to linger and observe, while others are described as conduits for distant visions, gently transmitting images, feelings, or premonitions, always softly, without urgency or disruption. The crafting of these skulls is thought to have required long, meticulous effort, polishing the quartz until it seems to glow faintly from within, capturing the quiet persistence of artisan skill. Legends suggest that they were used in rituals, or perhaps kept in sacred spaces, where their presence provided reflection and meditation rather than immediate revelation. The skull's allure, despite being subtle, rests in their promise of slow revelation. Insight does not arrive abruptly, but emerges as one contemplates, traces the gentle curves, and lets the mind drift in tandem with the artifact's quiet influence. In this sense, crystal skulls become not only objects of intrigue but soft reminders of time, patience, and the unhurried accumulation of understanding, whispering through centuries without need for proclamation. By 1150 CE, the Orlov diamond makes its soft entrance into Russian legend, though its origins trace back to a Hindu temple in southern India, where it was once set into a deity's eye. This gem, immense and cushion-cut, carries both legend and subtle misfortune, its presence said to bless owners with beauty and prominence while also trailing faint whispers of bad luck, a slow, persistent shadow rather than dramatic calamity. The diamond's color, a deep gray-white with delicate sparkle, draws attention without urgency, its surface reflecting ambient light in a steady, measured way, like sunlight through a soft haze. In stories, the stone was transferred across continents, from sacred temple use to imperial Russian collection, its aura unchanged, a reminder that objects can retain the weight of history and myth across vast distances and time. Its reputed curse is slow, cumulative, teaching that fortune is rarely immediate, and that even in brilliance there may reside imperceptible consequences, barely noticeable unless observed with patience. Imagining the Orlov diamond resting quietly in velvet-lined boxes, under watchful care, one can sense its calm authority, a reflection of centuries of human fascination, desire, and careful stewardship. The gem is more than decoration, it is a meditation on the interplay between beauty, power, and subtle moral lesson, an enduring whisper through history, and a patient companion to those who regard it with reflection rather than haste. Around 1200 CE, in Christian legend and apocryphal retellings, there exists the flaming sword of Eden, a weapon of divine guardianship stationed at the entrance to the Garden of Eden, wielded to prevent mortals from retracing steps into paradise. This sword, imagined as wreathed in slow, steady flame, does not burn in chaotic bursts, but radiates a controlled, luminous barrier that hums with quiet authority. Some accounts describe the blade as impossibly bright yet gentle to look upon, its fire not consuming the world around it, but signaling the threshold between human ambition and sacred mystery. In contemplating this sword, one may imagine angels standing vigil, motionless yet present, their hands hovering near the hilt, as the garden beyond remains untouched, protected by a combination of skill, obedience, and divine will. The legend emphasizes the sword's duality, a warning and a guide, a slow, persistent reminder that certain spaces are held with care, and that some forces act not through chaos, but through sustained, deliberate presence. Its flames, though imposing in concept, are steady, measured, and almost meditative in effect, a gentle barrier rather than violent obstruction. The flaming sword of Eden thus lingers in story as a symbol of careful protection, patience, and the quiet maintenance of sacred boundaries, a soft emblem that teaches restraint, awareness, and the enduring weight of unseen guardianship across centuries of reflection and devotion. Around 1250 CE, deep within the candlelit scriptoriums of medieval Europe, there exists the story of the Codex Haegus, often called the Devil's Bible, a manuscript remarkable both for its enormous size and the legend surrounding its creation. The book, imagined as nearly a meter in height and filled with tightly scribed Latin text on vellum, contains not only religious material but also historical chronicles, medical remedies, and magical formulas. Stories whisper that it was written in a single night with infernal assistance, though careful study shows that such a feat would have been impossible without decades of meticulous, patient labor, illustrating the human fascination with exaggeration and the supernatural. Its pages, dense yet orderly, might be envisioned as moving under the slow glide of a quill, each letter pressed carefully into prepared parchment, the scent of animal skin and ink lingering softly in the air, as if the manuscript itself exhaled centuries of quiet diligence. Within the book, a full-page illustration of a devil peers out, staring gently yet persistently at the reader, reminding one of myth's ability to draw attention without urgency, and to fill space with wonder measured and long, deliberate contemplation. The Codex Haegus thus persists not only as a text but as a meditation on the human desire to achieve greatness, the slow accumulation of knowledge, and the ways myth can enhance reality, allowing an object to be both massive in form and quietly compelling in presence, a book that seems to breathe through its centuries of existence, resting gently on the edge between history and imagination. By 1300 CE, in the blended mythic imagination of Egypto-Greek scholarship, there is the Book of Thoth, a fabled compendium said to contain spells capable of controlling the earth, the sea, and the sky, as well as granting wisdom and insight to those patient enough to understand it. The text, attributed to Thoth, the ibis-headed deity of writing, knowledge, and magic, is imagined as small enough to carry, yet dense with cryptic diagrams, hieroglyphs, and arcane symbols, each line requiring slow, careful study. Some accounts suggest that reading it aloud or touching its pages improperly could cause unseen harm or reveal truths too vast for the mortal mind, a soft warning rather than violent threat. One can picture the book resting in a shaded alcove, its surfaces worn from centuries of careful handling, faint scents of papyrus and ink rising in delicate wisps, as the user traces fingers across its surface, absorbing knowledge in gentle increments. Its supposed spells, affecting weather, growth, or cosmic patterns, are described in a manner that emphasizes understanding and patience, not immediate power. In legend, the Book of Thoth encourages reflection and long-term observation, rewarding subtlety over haste, and creating a quiet connection between human and divine intellect. This magical tome, whether ever truly existent or not, persists in imagination as an emblem of deliberate wisdom, the kind that unfolds softly over time, like the slow drift of clouds over an ancient river, carrying both caution and gentle illumination in its whispered, unhurried pages. Around 1400 CE, in the rich laboratories and manuscripts of alchemy, emerges the concept of the Philosopher's Stone, a mystical substance reputed to transform base metals into gold and grant a form of immortality, though always framed in legend and careful allegory rather than empirical certainty. Alchemists describe it as a dense, luminous material, sometimes red, sometimes crystalline, whose creation required meticulous observation, patient heating and cooling cycles, and detailed note-taking, a slow, deliberate manipulation of natural processes intended to mirror the perfection of the cosmos. The stone itself is often imagined as small, held carefully in the hand, yet infinitely potent, a paradox of scale and effect, its imagined surfaces reflecting ambient candlelight in ways that soothe rather than dazzle. Its symbolic resonance, in addition to its literal claims, serve to inspire patience, ethical reflection, and measured attention to processes rather than only results, suggesting that the transmutation of metals is as much about personal refinement as material gain. One can picture the quiet laboratories of medieval Europe, shelves lined with flasks, powders, and diagrams, the alchemist moving slowly, inhaling the faintly fragrant smoke of gentle heating, checking colors and textures over days and nights, practicing the art of unhurried observation. The Philosopher's Stone thus exists not only as a legend of miraculous transformation but as a meditation on patience, reflection, and the slow unfolding of insight, a gentle emblem of human curiosity and the soft accumulation of knowledge through centuries of careful experimentation. By 1500 CE, among the sandy coasts and whispering waves of the Caribbean and New England, there arises the tale of Captain Kidd's treasure, a pirate hoard reputedly hidden in secret coves, shipwrecks, or buried beneath wind-swept beaches. Stories suggest chests filled with gold coins, silver, jewelry, and trinkets, yet the treasure's location remains elusive, drifting slowly through collective imagination like a faint mist over tidal pools. Historical evidence points to Kidd's exploits in the late 17th century, yet the legend's earliest roots begin around the cusp of the 16th century, when piracy was quietly embedding itself in maritime culture, emphasizing preparation, cunning, and patience over dramatic adventure. One can imagine the treasure as carefully stowed, chests lined with velvet or wood shavings, coins polished by gentle waves and air, sitting undisturbed for decades, the sand and salt preserving them in quiet equilibrium. Maps drawn by hand, marked with almost imperceptible notations, guide seekers slowly rather than directly, rewarding observation, patience, and reflection. The treasure, whether found or not, has accumulated a quiet authority in cultural memory, illustrating the human fascination with hidden wealth, delayed gratification, and careful planning. Its story is a meditation on desire and patience, teaching that even in adventure there is a rhythm of observation, slow accumulation, and contemplation, as if the earth itself invites one to pause, observe, and consider before claiming what lies beneath, a whispering lesson carried softly across centuries of lore. Around 1600 CE, in the ornate halls of Russian palaces, there emerged the legend of the Amber Room, a chamber whose walls were said to be covered in panels of amber, gold leaf, and mirrors, creating a luminous environment that refracted light softly across every surface. Craftsmen reportedly worked for decades, meticulously fitting pieces of amber into intricate designs, their edges smooth and polished so that each panel seemed to glow from within, as if holding centuries of sunlight captured in resin. The room, sometimes called the eighth wonder of the world, was not merely decorative, it was a statement of wealth, artistic patience, and meticulous planning, every tiny amber block reflecting not only light but a devotion to craft and subtlety. During World War II, The room was looted by German forces and transported to Königsberg, after which its fate became shrouded in mystery, inspiring countless searches, theories, and imaginings. Scholars note that the panels may have been dismantled and hidden, sunk in bunkers, or lost in transit, yet no definitive discovery has been made. One can imagine the quiet halls, the faint scent of aged resin and polished wood, and the soft, warm glow of amber diffused through panes, creating a room that seems to breathe slowly, echoing human ingenuity across centuries. The amber room remains a meditation on impermanence, patience, and the quiet longing that accompanies something beautiful and unattainable, an example of craftsmanship preserved in memory as much as in material, a softly glowing fragment of history waiting, perhaps, to be rediscovered. By 1700 CE, along the misty coasts of Peru, whispers circulate about the treasure of Lima, a lost hoard of gold, silver, and precious jewels gathered to safeguard the wealth of the Spanish viceroyalty. Legend suggests that during political upheaval, a galleon laden with treasure was intercepted, and the treasure subsequently hidden in secret coves or remote islands, where the ocean's tides and shifting sands obscured its resting place. Records of the era confirm that Spanish authorities transported substantial wealth from Lima to prevent seizure, yet the final disposition of much of it remains a mystery, leaving room for centuries of careful speculation and map-making. One can picture the hoard meticulously packed into chests, each coin and gem arranged with deliberate order, lids closed and secured, the weight of the collection almost imperceptibly shifting with the rocking of a small vessel in the Pacific. Even the act of hiding it, in this imagining, is quiet and methodical, conducted in the soft, early hours before dawn, the muffled sound of waves providing gentle accompaniment. Over time, tales of the treasure grew, mingling historical fact and imagination, encouraging patient seekers to observe, measure, and calculate rather than rush. The treasure of Lima endures in memory as a soft reminder of human desire, meticulous planning, and the quiet allure of what may lie just beyond reach, resting somewhere beneath sun-warmed sands or the gentle sway of the sea, waiting for slow discovery. Around 1800 CE, the Flor de la Mar, a Portuguese carrack of immense size, becomes the focal point of legend and maritime imagination, having been lost with a prodigious treasure during its voyage near Sumatra. Constructed in the early 16th century and later carrying accumulated wealth from the Malacca region, the ship was reportedly laden with gold, silver, gemstones, and sacred objects, each item stored with care in compartments and chests designed to protect them from moisture and shifting during long ocean crossings. The vessel's wreck is documented in historical accounts as occurring during a storm in the Strait of Malacca, though the exact location remains unknown, which has inspired generations of meticulous searches and oceanographic mapping, undertaken slowly and deliberately. One may envision the ship's holds, chests carefully stacked, contents faintly shifting as the hull lists gently under the waves, and the soft diffusion of sunlight through shallow water illuminating golden coins and amber-colored gems. Legends amplify these details, suggesting that even after 2 centuries underwater, the treasure retains a subtle aura, preserved in quiet equilibrium by sand and silt, undisturbed by human hands. The story of the Flor de la Mar treasure is as much a meditation on patience, observation, and the allure of distant riches as it is a record of maritime misfortune, reminding us that sometimes the most captivating treasures are not the ones found, but those that linger in collective memory, undisturbed, waiting for the slow, careful touch of discovery. By 1900 CE, in the shadowed islands of the Philippines, the legend of Yamashita's gold emerges, entwined with the retreat of Japanese forces at the end of the Second World War. General Tomoyuki Yamashita, according to folklore, allegedly commanded treasure amassed from occupied territories to be hidden in caves, tunnels, and remote beaches, creating a network of secret caches whose exact locations are debated to this day. Historical investigation confirms some movement of wartime loot, though definitive evidence of the treasure's existence remains elusive, inviting patient and meticulous study rather than dramatic revelation. One can imagine the soft clinking of coins packed into wooden chests, carefully lowered into concealed alcoves, the faint scent of salt air and damp earth lingering over each site. Maps and coded instructions, if they existed, would have been drawn slowly, designed to preserve the treasure from both opportunistic soldiers and natural erosion, emphasizing careful observation and deliberate planning over immediate gain. Generations of searchers, treasure hunters, and historians have contributed to the slow unfolding of this story, each new theory a gentle ripple across the still waters of legend. Yamashita's gold endures not merely as a lost collection of riches but as a meditation on patience, human desire, and the quiet persistence of myth, whispering across decades, suggesting that the most enduring treasures may be those that exist largely in the careful, contemplative attention of those who seek them, rather than in any single chest or cavern, soft and elusive as drifting mist over a hidden bay. Around 1905 CE, in the refined courts of Europe, the Florentine diamond begins its quiet, storied existence as one of the most luminous yellow diamonds known to collectors and monarchs alike. Though the stone itself predates modern history, it enters recorded legend around this time through repeated exhibitions, particularly in Vienna, where its color, an intense canary yellow, and its impressive 137-carat weight mesmerized those who glimpsed it through velvet cases. The diamond is said to have been cut from a larger crystal mined in India centuries earlier, and its facets are so precisely arranged that they catch and hold light like slow-moving honey, refracting it in a warm, golden glow that seems to whisper rather than dazzle. In 1918, during the turbulent aftermath of World War I, the diamond disappeared from its Viennese display, and rumors of theft and secretive transfers began to drift through Europe's salons and auction houses. Some claim it was smuggled abroad, others that it vanished into private collections where it sits quietly, hidden from the world's gaze. The Florentine diamond's story is less about dramatic action and more about meticulous observation, imagining its size, weight, the gentle warmth of its golden hue against pale skin, the patient hands that may have held it, and the careful polishing that shaped each facet. Even lost, it persists in human memory, a quietly luminous symbol of wealth, precision, and enduring mystery, patiently refracting light across decades, waiting for the day it may be glimpsed again. By 1914 CE, in the rolling seas and busy ports of maritime trade, the ambergris hoard drifts softly into legend. This elusive treasure, composed of rare whale ambergris, carried not only monetary value but a subtle, almost olfactory presence, its scent like damp sea air filtered through gentle sun. Ambergris forms within the digestive systems of sperm whales, often expelled into the ocean and slowly cured over years by salt, waves, and sun, becoming light, waxy, and fragrant, a material so delicate that each piece is unique. Stories tell of caches amassed by enterprising merchants during the height of whaling and global trade, then lost to storms, sinking ships, or wartime interception around the period of World War I. Ships carrying these floating treasures were sometimes targeted or rerouted, and the ambergris hoards, carefully packed and bound with cord, might have settled quietly on the ocean floor or disappeared into secret warehouses, their precise locations fading from memory. Imagining a single chest of ambergris, one can almost sense its weight, the faint sweet marine aroma lingering in a wooden container, and the patient, slow counting of pieces for trade or perfume making, each measured with care and gentle reverence. The legend endures in whispers and shipping records, a reminder that human fascination with rare and subtle natural objects persists across generations, their quiet existence tugging softly at the imagination even when they remain unseen. In 1922 CE, the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of the Kings opens a chapter of gold, artistry, and a cascade of legends, including the infamous Curse of Tutankhamun. The tomb, meticulously prepared over 3 millennia earlier, contained a wealth of funerary items, gilded masks, chariots, jewelry, and statuary, each artifact laid with care to accompany the young pharaoh in his afterlife. The curse, as reported in newspapers and later repeated in popular culture, suggests misfortune or death for those who disturbed the tomb, though historians note that many accounts are anecdotal and often exaggerated. The artifacts themselves, however, are grounded in precise craftsmanship, gold sheets hammered and engraved with quiet precision, inlaid stones aligned to catch the low desert sun, wooden figurines coated in painted resin to preserve their shape, each piece whispering the care of artisans long past. The narrative of the curse adds a slow, atmospheric tension to what is otherwise a serene archaeological tableau, the tomb as a sealed chamber, dust motes suspended in still air, treasures gleaming softly under the careful light of lamps. Scholars continue to study the tomb with meticulous attention, cataloging each object, noting chemical compositions, and tracing provenance, all while the imagined whispers of the past drift through corridors of time. In this quiet contemplation, the tomb and its associated curse become a gentle meditation on mortality, preservation, and human curiosity, echoing softly across decades as a legend that balances awe and meticulous observation. By 1930 CE, in the still, cold waters of Austria's Lake Toplitz, whispers of hidden treasure circulate, tracing back to the final years of the Second World War. Legends claim that Nazi forces, retreating from advancing Allied troops, submerged gold, valuables, and sensitive documents into the lake's murky depths to prevent their capture. Lake Toplitz itself is unusually deep, cold, and oxygen-poor, creating an environment that slows decay and preserves objects more effectively than most bodies of water. The treasure, if it exists, is imagined as chests carefully sealed, their contents including gold bars, currency, and perhaps files detailing clandestine operations, each item resting silently under layers of water and silt, untouched for decades. Exploration attempts have been slow and cautious, involving meticulous mapping, sonar scanning, and the gentle lowering of divers into the dark, cold water, all conducted with patience and precision, because rushing would disturb the delicate sediment or risk losing track of objects. Over time, speculation about the treasure has grown, fueled by partial recovery of minor artifacts and the almost imperceptible traces of historical records. In contemplating Lake Toplitz and its hidden cargo, one is invited to imagine quiet patience, the almost imperceptible shift of sun through fog over glassy water, and the slow accumulation of legend alongside fact, reminding us that some treasures exist as much in careful attention, calculation, and the patient mind as they do in material reality, soft and elusive beneath the lake's surface. By 1944 CE, in the shadowed hills and tunnels of southwestern Poland, the legend of the Nazi gold train quietly takes form. According to whispered accounts, a train filled with gold, currency, and valuable artifacts was concealed within railway tunnels as the Third Reich faced the slow collapse of its eastern front. The gold itself would have been accumulated from occupied territories, meticulously catalogued and loaded onto specialized railcars, each piece packed to avoid shifting during transport. The train's tunnels, hewn from soft earth and reinforced with timber, create an environment where treasures might remain untouched, wrapped in dust and cool darkness. Explorers and historians, over decades, have mapped possible routes, noting topographical features in wartime railway records, yet the train remains hidden, if it exists at all, a ghostly reminder of organized precision and human avarice. One can imagine the glint of coins under flickering lantern light, the soft scrape of metal as doors closed, and the patient, careful planning required to move such weight through a war-torn landscape. In reflecting upon this tale, the mind drifts slowly through tunnels lined with memory and legend, considering both the material value and the meticulous logistics that such an undertaking required, the very act of imagining it invoking a soft, almost hypnotic sense of deliberate order amidst chaos. In 1945 CE, as Berlin faced the final days of World War II, stories of Hitler's lost art collection began circulating with hushed reverence. This collection, gathered from museums, private collections, and occupied countries, supposedly contained thousands of paintings, sculptures, and decorative art, each item catalogued with care before hurried concealment. Vaults, hidden rooms, and remote storage sites across Germany were said to house these treasures, now enshrouded in shadows and dust. The artworks themselves, ranging from Renaissance canvases to Baroque sculpture, were objects of meticulous creation, each brushstroke, each chiseling marking a human hand, now caught in a suspended state of time. Scholars, historians, and adventurers have pieced together inventories, tracing crates and transport records, yet much remains lost, drifting between documentation and legend. Imagining these pieces lying silent, the quiet tension of a room once bustling with collectors replaced by stillness, allows one to sense the slow, careful effort that must have gone into hiding them. The story persists not because of dramatic pursuit but because of the almost imperceptible human care, cataloging, and deliberate secrecy, each item lying in quiet anticipation, waiting for eyes to find it again, a slow meditation on the impermanence of human possession and the endurance of meticulous record-keeping. Around 1945 CE, in the tumultuous aftermath of the Russian Revolution and civil upheaval, the Romanov jewels quietly enter the realm of legend. These jewels, once personal treasures of the imperial family, included crowns, scepters, necklaces, and gemstones of immense size and beauty, each meticulously crafted by jewelers whose names are now partially lost to history. Some pieces were displayed in court ceremonies, others kept in private chambers, their weight, polish, and color calculated for aesthetic and symbolic impact. When the monarchy fell, these objects disappeared into the swirl of political chaos, some confiscated, others hidden, and many rumored lost forever. The gems themselves, from deep rubies to soft-hued pearls, continue to capture attention for their beauty and craftsmanship, even as their precise locations are unknown. Imagining them is a slow, immersive exercise, the subtle glint of sunlight on ruby facets, the gentle curve of a pearl strand, the weight of gold settings in the hand. Archival records and occasional sightings fuel speculation, but the jewel's quiet absence becomes part of their story, a meditation on lost wealth, political upheaval, and human fascination with beauty preserved or vanished. Each imagined piece rests like a silent witness to a bygone court, its presence measured in memory, story, and patient scholarly attention, a gentle reflection on the impermanence of material splendor. By 1945 CE, across oceans and seas beleaguered by war, U-boat treasure caches enter the whispered chronicles of maritime legend. German submarines, laden with gold, currency, and valuables intended for relocation or protection, were sometimes sunk in the North Atlantic, Baltic, or even along coastal ports to prevent capture. These vessels, steel-hulled and carefully compartmentalized, became cold, silent tombs, each treasure meticulously packed in crates, chests, or specialized containers to prevent shifting during perilous journeys. Divers and historians have long tried to locate these caches, using sonar, historical logs, and wartime maps to trace the likely resting places of the treasures. The objects themselves, bars of gold, coins, and personal valuables, represent careful human counting, documentation, and preservation under tense circumstances, now resting in the quiet, dark waters. Imagining them evokes the slow descent of a diver into still, shadowed depths, the soft displacement of silt, and the careful handling of artifacts that have rested untouched for decades. The legend of these U-boat treasures endures not for the thrill of theft or adventure, but as a meditation on patient logistics, human foresight, and the quiet persistence of objects lost to time and tide, lying beneath waves as still and unassuming as any object can, yet carrying stories of precision, risk, and calculated care, softly awaiting rediscovery. In the year 1945 CE, during the waning months of World War II, the Operation Bernhardt forgeries quietly unfolded, a tale of meticulous human craft and slow, deliberate deception. Nazi Germany, facing the inexorable advance of Allied forces, devised a plan to destabilize the British economy through mass-produced counterfeit banknotes. These forgeries were said to be so precise that each note could pass careful inspection, with intricate engraving, exacting paper quality, and subtle watermarks that mimicked legal currency. The process involved a workforce of skilled prisoners, often selected for their training in art, printing, or engraving, who labored under strict supervision in a secret facility. Sheets of currency were printed, inspected, and bundled with care, each step executed with patient repetition to ensure uniformity. Once completed, these notes were stored in hidden caches, secret compartments, and underground vaults, awaiting transport or deployment. The sheer scale of the operation, the tens of millions of pounds in counterfeit bills, reflects the calculated patience and attention to detail, rather than dramatic action. Imagining the cool, dimly lit rooms where printers and engravers worked, the gentle clatter of presses, and the deliberate stacking of sheets, evokes a quiet tension, a human endeavor of precision, hidden in plain sight, lingering long after the war ended. By 1945 CE, whispers of the Tiger of Malaya gold began to circulate, centered on Southeast Asia and the last desperate movements of Japanese generals during the final months of World War II. This treasure hoard, rumored to belong to a high-ranking officer, supposedly contained vast quantities of gold, currency, and precious artifacts, gathered from occupied territories and meticulously stored in hidden locations, caves, dense forests, or mountainous enclaves. Historical accounts, survivor testimonies, and post-war intelligence hint at careful concealment, each piece labeled, wrapped, and arranged to prevent loss or theft. The treasures themselves, whether glimmering ingots, finely crafted ornaments, or secure coin bundles, reflect painstaking human attention, each object carefully chosen and handled, a tangible symbol of wealth and power. Imagining these caches invokes a quiet contemplation, the slow placement of gold in shadowed earth, the soundless layering of metal against metal, and the patient hope that concealment might outlast the chaos of war. Over decades, researchers and adventurers have speculated about precise locations, tracing forest paths, riverbeds, and mountainsides, often discovering nothing tangible, yet lingering in the sense of meticulous planning and hidden potential. The Tiger of Malaya gold, whether real or partly imagined, becomes a meditation on the deliberate movement and careful concealment of human wealth, a story of precise hands acting in stillness, leaving treasures in quiet anticipation of rediscovery, like a pause in history itself. And then came 1947 CE, the Banks Island gold emerges quietly, an Arctic legend, nestled in the frigid landscapes of northern Canada. Allegedly salvaged from shipwrecks along icy waters, this treasure was said to have been carried inland, stowed in hidden caves and crevices, awaiting discovery. The Arctic environment, with its glacial drift, snow-laden rocks, and slow-moving ice, provides a natural camouflage, preserving wood, metal, and coinage alike for decades in relative stasis. The treasure itself, imagined as gold coins, ingots, or personal artifacts from lost ships, reflects careful human collection, bundling, and transport across harsh terrain, requiring slow, deliberate labor and extreme cold. Expeditions over the years have attempted to trace these hidden troves using sparse maps, oral accounts, and geological clues, but none have yielded definitive recovery. One can envision the patient footsteps crunching over frostbound earth, the soft echo of movement in caves lined with ice, and the slow placement of valuables into niches sheltered from wind and snow. In this legend, human care and environmental patience intersect, creating a quiet story of survival, concealment, and hope. The Banks Island gold rests, suspended between history and imagination, a gentle meditation on endurance, the deliberate act of hiding, and the patient passage of decades, leaving treasures to slumber beneath Arctic stillness until perhaps, if ever, they are awakened. And so, as the shadows stretch across the quiet galleries and the last whispers of footsteps fade into memory, we can almost feel the gentle hum of time wrapping around these vanished treasures. In this suspended moment, we can let our thoughts drift alongside their story, imagining the soft gleam of metal under a dim light, or the delicate curves of artistry crafted so long ago. And as we close our eyes, the treasures float softly through the imagination, resting in a space that is neither here nor there, a gentle reminder that some stories, like gold dust caught in sunbeams, shimmer best when contemplated slowly, with patience, and a soft, sloth-like pause. Until we meet them again, somewhere in the folds of time. If your eyes are closed, if your thoughts are drifting, then my job here is done for today. Thank you for spending this unremarkable moment with me. You have listened to The Sleepy Sloth, where uninteresting things become the softest lullabies.